As you saw first earlier this week on 13 News, the Shawnee County District Attorney's Office has a new partner in fighting certain sex crimes. Goose can sniff out evidence in cases involving computers. So now that he's got the recorded interview out of the way, Goose is here live with his handler Bradley Barrett and DA Mike Kagay. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, you can, well, you can't because you can't see him, but you're going to see here Goose is on a break because he's not working. So he's very relaxed, very chilled out. There he is. We promise. Goose is here with us. But Mike, why did you decide to bring Goose onto the team?
Well, because, Melissa, we have a problem in this community with exploitation. We have a problem with human trafficking. We have a problem with sex offenders. And when they engage in these types of behaviors, they tend to memorialize evidence of what they've done or what someone else has done, what we refer to as child sexual abuse materials. And they store these on electronic devices, and they're very good at hiding them. And so in an effort to support law enforcement in their investigations, make sure we can collect all available evidence and prosecute them and hold them accountable, we wanted to bring Goose on board because they can't hide them from Goose.
No, so why in your office as opposed to, say, the sheriff's office or the police department?
Great question. So Brad Barrett, who is a special investigator in my office with a focus on exploitation and human trafficking investigations, that is his full responsibility. He is the one who identified this program, which is actually made possible by a grant from a nonprofit called Operation Underground Railroad. And he brought me this idea, 3 months ago?
Yeah, about.
Yeah, and he outlined the premise, which is we can have a canine dedicated to detecting electronic storage devices. And he also doubles as a comfort dog, which is great for us because we have kids or their victims who are vulnerable and feel very uncomfortable sometimes with our process. And so he can be there in the room with them when they're meeting with the attorneys and my staff. He can be there when it's time for them to testify in court. So for me, this is just a huge win.
And he is pretty cool.
Yeah.
At what point, though, Brad, being in the prosecutor's office, what point do you get involved? Do you get involved after someone's already charged, or does law enforcement reach out to you and say, we're considering these charges, but we need a little assistance?
No, so it's actually working in partnership with law enforcement actively while they're doing the investigation. So if law enforcement has a tip or they're serving a search warrant or even pre-search warrant, we're assisting them in the investigation of it, then we can bring Goose in once they're executing it, or if it's say a voluntary or a consent search, and we can help them in any capacity at any part of the investigation.
And how does he work? Because I do have an SD card here, but
Yeah.
you said the way he works, he's going to stay on a break right now.
Yeah.
So if I wanted him to find it, though, and I had it in a hand, and I said, what are you going to do? How would you work? What would happen?
Absolutely. So Goose is food driven. So a lot of dogs go off
We don't have food, so he's just laying
he doesn't
down
care.
right now.
So I have a food pouch that has his kibble in it, and so I'll say, hey, ready to go to work? He'll get excited. I'm saying it kind of quietly now because I don't want to get him excited. But then I'll have my food pouch, and then we'll say, hey, seek, start throwing targets. He'll start searching the area. When he indicates, which you saw in the video previous this week, he'll sit, and I'll say, show me, and then he'll point his nose right at it. And so that's how he works. That's how he goes through the process.
What's in these that he can find?
So,
and how is it different than what's in other stuff?
No, absolutely. So any kind of electronic storage device, so SD cards, internal storage on laptops, phones, even some GPS devices, if they have the capability of logging and maintaining digital data within itself, then it has a chemical sprayed on it that keeps it from overheating or corroding. So Goose is trained on that chemical, and that's what he alerts on.
If the bad guys know this, how do you make sure that they're not getting rid of whatever's in there? Or is it impossible to get rid of?
Well, yeah, if you get rid of that chemical, then it would either corrode or overheat, and it would ruin it. So yeah, it's just, it's great for our purposes because without that chemical, it won't work. So.
How big of a tool is this, Mike, and how does it help in what you're able to charge someone with? Because I imagine the more evidence, the more counts, the greater the penalty could potentially be.
Absolutely. And so what we have seen is, like I said, the offenders are good at hiding these materials. They know that if we uncover them, it's bad for the offender, right? It's going to go against their own interests. So they're very good at hiding them. And we've seen this play out time and time again. When we are doing these investigations, most of the time people are not going to be forthcoming about what they've been up to. We have to be able to prove it in court, and that requires the evidence. So we have to be able to find a hidden SD card, a hidden camera, a laptop that may have everything stored on it. Whereas, 20 years ago, all of these would have been on VHS tapes.
I remember those.
Right?
I still have some of those.
Right? Now everything's digitized, and that includes the offenders, and that's where Goose comes in.
Well, it's fascinating to me. We had never heard about this before, so it's been interesting to get to hear how this program works. Goose, I'm glad that you're so excited to be here live with us today. But Mike, Brad, thank you so very much for letting us meet Goose in person and seeing a bit more about what he can do. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Well, did you know kids can take advantage